Welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I am Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. Good to have you back, Taylor. Going solo, not so easy on the vocal cords, and I was stumbling over my words yesterday, so hopefully we can trade off a little bit. We do have a 6-game slate, lots and lots of injury news, as we just discussed before we went live here, technically speaking. But yeah, let's get into it, man. We got the Grizzlies with the highest spread I've seen in a very, very long time at 18.5 against the Cavs in Cleveland. Total 213.5. It doesn't look very appealing in a vacuum, but it's obviously not a bad spot for the Cavs. And the Grizzlies are potentially down to just 8 guys once again. I will note that Jake LaRavia and Lamar Stevens are technically questionable, but if they are out, we are once again looking at 8 bodies for Memphis, and that means we should look at Grizzlies. All right, so starting on the Memphis side, who stands out the most for you?
Oh, it's just a mess every night with them, and I wish they were not allowed to play. But, yeah, there's going to be value no matter what, like 10 at the max, right? So they're going to have to play a pretty condensed rotation. Goodwin for 5.5, Pippen for 5.9. You could argue are a little too cheap. Stevens, if he's in, is 4.4. I think he's a pretty decent play. Ditto for LaRavia if he's in for 5K flat. It's just they're all cheap, and they all have to play. So it's kind of a mess. This Mauzinho Pereira guy, is he available? If some other guys are out?
He was not brought back on a second contract, so he's gone.
Damn, he was actually kind of doing well, so that's a little surprising.
And Dejan Giroux, he's out of there too. So always got to be careful who we click on and commit to. When I did my write-up yesterday, at first I had Pereira in my write-up because he was cheap and he had been playing well. And then I was in the middle of the day, I was like, oh shit, he's not even fucking on the team. So
yeah, it's probably, I think Goodwin's the one that's probably the one you want. Agreed. And then everyone else is kind of a filler. GG maybe if guys are out, but he's kind of the one guy that's actually priced up. So not loving it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 8 guys, I do love it. And I think you're right on, though. Goodwin is the top guy, and right behind him, it's very, very close. They have similar prices. They project similarly, and they both have the 2 best. Well, actually, Trey Jefferson's in there too, but they look good as far as if they don't have the bodies. If 10 guys are in there, I'd be less inclined to force Grizzlies in because they're the Grizzlies. And then some of these guys that had solidified roles, maybe they don't get as many minutes, which, by the way, G.G. Jackson, technically speaking, is the best play for Memphis, but his minutes have not been there like they have been for Pippen and Jemison and Goodwin. So I would definitely lean towards Goodwin as my top play for Memphis. Right behind him is Pippen. And then Jemison at 4.3 looks awesome if Lamar Stevens is out. I think he's still playable if Stevens is in, but I like it. All these Grizzlies a lot more if we're just dealing with that tight 8-man rotation. On the other side are the Cavs. Obviously, this game is projected to be an absolute ass-kicking. I tend to agree with that logic, so I'm not super excited to pay for a fully healthy Cleveland offense. But it's also a good spot for them. So if you have a little bit of interest in Spida or Jarrett Allen or whatever, I'm not going to get you off of it. How are you feeling about the Cavs here?
Not super psyched. I think Evan Mobley, just because they don't have Jaren Jackson in there to protect the paint, is okay. But he's 7'8", so it's not like he's cheap.
Right.
You can make the same case for Allen at 8.1. They're both priced up. Mitchell is arguably priced a little down, but he has been banged up lately, and they do still have reason to care about this game. They can all move up to second in the standings by the end of the season. So, but I don't think they have to really go all out to win this game. So, yeah, it's really not something I want to get into on this slate, just because I'm hoping there's better stuff. Although I'm skeptical that there actually is.
Yeah, those better stuff are starting to fall away from us a little bit. We'll get to that a little later. But honestly, the one that stands out the most to me in theory would be Spida, just because 9.1 for Donovan Mitchell's upside is really tough to completely ignore, especially since right now he's carrying like no ownership. The obvious downside with Mitchell is he's not been in top form. And as you said, he's been banged up. In his last 7 games, he's not topped 40 fantasy points one time. That just goes back to Cleveland is at full strength. They're shooting for the playoffs, obviously, here. So they do not need to force it and get maximum effort from him. If there was going to be one guy I play, it would probably be him, just because we know what his ceiling is. But I am probably off of the Cleveland side of this game. All right, we got Hornets and Hawks in Atlanta. Trae Young might be back. So there's that. Thought he was dead, but whatever. There's that. And also Jalen Johnson's out for the year now. DeJounte Murray's questionable. Who else is questionable for the Hawks? DeAndre Hunter's questionable. He said a huge game, 49 fantasy points in 47 minutes in the last game. And Okongwu's still out. I mean, we could be looking at a lot of value, a lot of gross value when you start looking at guys like Vit Krejci, Garrison Matthews. It's disgusting. But it's worth noting on the Charlotte end, obviously they have a very good pace-up matchup with the Hawks. The Hawks don't defend well. The only main body, it's Mark Williams, is forever out. Obviously, LaMelo Ball is dead. Everybody else is there. So, honestly, Charlotte looks pretty good here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, which is a good sign that the slate is bad if Charlotte looks good. Miles Bridges.
Environment, though.
Yeah, it is. Bridges for 7-9 looks pretty good to me. Minutes are still there for him and Brandon Miller. Grant Williams even for 5-4 has been starting even with Richards back. So still looks decent. I can't believe we're paying up for Grant Williams and enjoying it, but it is what it is.
5-4 is not that bad.
Well, paying usually is like 3K, and like even at 3K with like the Mavs, we were like, oh, I don't want to play Grant Williams at 3K with 20 minutes.
He's like basically a superstar on this team. That's how bad.
That's true. I guess Mičić and Mann are like dart throws, but probably not on this slate. It's really just Bridges, Williams, and Miller for me.
I honestly like Mičić and Mann quite a bit. Micic's minutes went down last game because they got their asses kicked by the Mavs, but beyond that game, he's been playing 35 minutes a game. Same with Trey Mann. They're 5-5 and 5-7. Good prices for a really good environment. I like them a lot. I would favor Trey Mann here. He's a little bit cheaper. I'm with you on Miles Bridges. 7.9 is way too cheap for his upside in this spot. And then everybody else is just okay. Grant Williams, in theory, is a good value because he's going to push for like 35-plus minutes, and the Hawks don't defend. So at 5-4, you can definitely play Grant Williams. If we get to the point where, okay, it's 25% owned right now. Yeah, if we're getting to the point where Grant Williams is like uber chalk, then I absolutely start to go looking for other options. But yeah, I like Charlotte a good amount here, and that doesn't make me feel gross at all. The Hawk side is tough to navigate just because we don't know for sure who's in and who's out. I think it's as simple as this for me. If Trae Young is in, I kind of don't want anybody, because we don't know if he's limited and we don't know what his return would mean for DeJounte. Don't really want him even if DeJounte is out, just because unless we know for sure, oh, he's not limited and he's 9K flat. That's pretty interesting all of a sudden. And then I guess we don't even know about DeAndre Hunter. I don't really want to look at Garrison Matthews and Vit Krejci. What about you?
Yeah, the one value guy that I think could be a thing is Kobe Buffkin. Like if Murray and or Young are out, I think the minutes are going to probably have to be there for him. And he's 3-2, so I'll probably get some of that if he kind of emerges. He should be pretty popular, I would think, in that scenario. Yeah. Trey's been dealing with a finger injury, so he could be limited a little, but I wouldn't expect it to be like 20 minutes. I would think 30 is a reasonable baseline for him. And against Charlotte, on a slate without a ton of stuff to pay for, beyond like Dame and Luka, and maybe SGA, I think this is a pretty good spot for him. So I would still get to Young, especially if Murray's out. He could play mid-30s minutes if it's just Trae Young out there. Otherwise, Capella, bigs against Charlotte, that's always been a thing. 6-5 for him is fine with Johnson out. Bogdanovic, if some of these wings are out, like Hunter, for example, he would look okay too. With everyone in, it's really just Capella. But we'll see how the news breaks, I guess, later in the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if we know that Young is going to play like about 35 minutes or so, like no real limitation, I'm with you at that price in this matchup. I guess we'll have to see how it shakes out. All right, next up we got Raptors and the Nets in Brooklyn. That's our pretty big 11.5-point favorites, which is kind of interesting because they're not good. We do know RJ Barrett is not going to play after playing last night. Kelly Olynyk is also out. So that obviously explains the spread, but the Nets still aren't so good that I expect them to just blow Toronto away. Emmanuel Quickley is back for this game.
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, I saw that he was in, but
yeah, I guess probable.
He's not on the injury report. Yeah, I think he's in.
Okay.
Worth noting that Grady Dick, Bruce Brown, and Gary Trent are all questionable. So, I mean, he could really quickly at 8.6 does feel a little bit steep, but he had 60-plus fantasy points in each of his last 2 games. And if any of those guys are out, honestly, even if they're not, the usage is just going to be off the charts for him. So I don't like the price, but he honestly is not expensive enough for the role he's going to be taking on in this game. So if you think the game stays close, I am more than okay with paying up for right now what looks like a pretty unowned Emmanuel Quickley. If Gary Trent is in at 6.4, I'm okay with that. And then depending on the other injury news, you could look at Grady Dick or Bruce Brown. It's a little bit murky, but how are you feeling about Toronto?
Yeah, I think the Quickley call is a good one. I guess the issue is the point guard is like the position you can spend at tonight. There's really no one else at any other position up there. So
of course he's not eligible for shooting guard either. So
yeah, cool. But that could help limit his ownership with Dame and Luka, etc. SGA. I mentioned Trae Young and Buffkin. I think they're all point guard only, so only so many players you can play. Quickley will still be owned, but maybe not overwhelmingly. Malik Williams is a guy popping his value with the Olynyk out, Jonte Porter out, Boucher, Pirtle. So they're pretty much down to their 5th string center right now. Yeah. I guess that's him. 4K flat. I think he's okay. Should be quite chalky, which is a little alarming since I've never heard of him until right now. But that's kind of the nature of April 10th NBA. And otherwise, Gary Trent, Ochai Agbaji, and maybe Grady Dick. But not really appealing beyond the top 2.
I mean, I guess there's Jalen McDaniels and there's Mohamedou Gueye. Gay? Okay.
I don't know.
He's 3.6. McDaniels 4.1. I would probably just roll with who ends up starting. And if that's Malik Williams, that's fine too. 4K flat. That looks good to me. But that looks like pretty interesting value. The only problem is I kind of trust Trey Jemison more, and I'd rather use one of those Spurs guys with Wemby out. So I mean, we can't really trust it anyways because they do have 2 bigs and McDaniels to kind of rotate. Worth mentioning though for sure. On the other side are the Nets. Let's see. Check out their injury situation. Nick Claxton is back. He's probable. Cam Johnson's back. He's probable. Dorian Finney-Smith remains out. So not much is changing here. Cam Thomas, Claxton, Cam Johnson, Dennis Schroeder, Mikal Bridges. I think they're all fine. I think Cam Thomas has the best ceiling. Claxton's probably the best price as far as like what he gets you. But just nobody really stands out for me. How are you feeling about the Nets?
It's not a bad. I mean, it's obviously a good matchup, but they are pretty healthy relative to the slate. Cam Thomas is the one I'm getting to the most. Shooting guard eligibility makes him easier to get to than some of the other guards. High usage, great matchup. I think he could have a stealing game, so happy to target that. Bridges for 6'7", you can argue he's a little cheap, even though he's pretty mediocre overall. He's still averaging upwards of a fantasy point per minute on the year. He and Claxton are fine. Schroeder, 6'1", kind of a neutral play for me. Cam Johnson, limited. He's cheap, but I think we have better value on this slate. Watford, Clowney with Claxton back. Probably not on my radar tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup is honestly really, really good. I agree with you completely that Cam Thomas, he comes in with the best projection by quite a bit for the Nets. 40 fantasy point projection, 26% boom rating at DFS Hero, which, by the way, if you use our link below this video, you get 15% off if you want to try them out as a lineup optimizer right now. But yeah, all the Nets look fine. It's just they're at full strength, so good luck picking like which 1 or 2 guys has like a really, really good game. But I agree that's probably going to be Cam Thomas and then one other dude, whoever the fuck that is. All right, so we got Mavs and Heat for the next game. Low 215.5 total, but it does have a nice 2-point spread with the Mavs favored on the road in South Beach. Miami should be at full strength. I think you told me Tyler Hero is actually in for this game, even though they were considering resting him. Terry Rozier is questionable. Duncan Robinson has been missing time, and he is listed as doubtful. So it's business as usual, really, for Miami. I think the main thing is going to be on the other side of this game with whether or not we play Luka. I'm assuming since we have all this value and nobody else to really pay up for, we're just going to do it. He is 12.8K. They're on the road. They played last night, and Miami's a good defensive team, but that's a big bowl of fuck it because it's Luka. And what are we going to do? Not play Luka on a slate with no other real studs, and then he gets 90 and just we look like assholes? Like, I think you have to play Luka tonight.
Maybe. We still have a lot of news outstanding, so kind of hard to say one way or the other if you lock him in. I have him at about 20% right now. Could certainly come in way over that by the time lock actually happens, but kind of we'll see. He's almost 13K and it is Miami, so not the best spots, even though he is fairly matchup proof. He's really all I'm getting to, though. PJ Washington kind of priced up. Kyrie, never a strong, amazing play with Luka in, though he is fine. He will show the occasional ceiling, but probably just Luka or bust on this team unless they have like unexpected later injury news.
Yeah, I agree. I never like using big men against Bam Bam. He's an underrated defender down low, and he just does not give up much production. Not super into Gafford. I think his major inefficient. He's so efficient with all those lobs from Luka. 12 for 12 in his last game. Went absolutely.
He had a streak of like 35 made shots in a row or something.
Because they're all dunks. Okay, so I think the prices for Washington and Gafford are totally fine if you want to just have last guy in kind of thing. But I think I'm going to follow your logic all the way across the board here. The thing is, you're not wrong about the fact that like this slate is very, very appealing for the mid-range right now. Like the mid-range is just full of. I mean, you look at the Nets guys, you look at the Raptors quickly, Cam Thomas, the Hawks, whoever ends up playing. Everybody looks really good. So you could talk yourself into, Luka on the second leg of a back-to-back on the road against a good defensive team. Maybe he just doesn't get there, right? The only problem is he did put up 73 fantasy points last time he faced them. So it's another reminder he is matchup proof. So I'm going to find it hard to not use him. I'm just doing single entry. I don't know how I personally can fade Luka today, but I do get what you're saying. On the other side are the Heat. I think I already did the injury rundown. How are you feeling about Miami guys tonight?
I don't mind Hero, assuming he's in, and Rozier maybe sits. Hero's going to look good at 6'9". I played him yesterday. He and Butler are both good. They're all kind of underpriced, especially if Rozier is out. Dallas is a pretty good matchup for production. So Hero, Butler, and Bam, don't hate that. Maybe Mitch Martin if Rozier is out, but I prefer to find a cheap value elsewhere today.
My gosh, Hero went freaking ham. What the hell? 33 real points, 45 fantasy points, 48 minutes. Come on. What was that all about?
OT.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I benefited from that a little bit too. I'm not on the Hero side, but that's crazy. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with Hero. I probably want Rozier out to really fall in love with that, but he is a good price. And Bam and Jimmy are totally fine. It's honestly a good matchup. Dallas is not a tough defensive team, so I'm okay with Heat guys. There's not like necessarily huge priorities for me. All right, Magic and Bucks. No Giannis. He scared everybody by making us think he ruptured his Achilles last night. He did not, so he's fine for the long run, hopefully, but he's not going to play tonight. And Chris Middleton has also been ruled out, so there's a lot to like on the Milwaukee side. Franz Wagner is questionable, and Markelle Fultz is questionable. Gary Harris is out, and I think you suggested Jonathan Isaac is forever questionable, although he's not on the injury report right now. So, having said all that, on the Orlando side, Banchero leads the way by miles as far as projection. Do you like him, and are there any other Magic guys you plan on playing tonight?
Yeah, I don't mind him 8-4. You could say he's a little cheap. Matchup's not bad. Milwaukee certainly without Giannis is not very imposing, even with him, not that imposing. So Banchero at 8-4, fine mid-range play. Wendell Carter maybe at 5-3. especially if Wagner's out. Minutes could be a little more safe for him, or if Isaac is out. Fultz doesn't really move the needle for me. They have enough guards they can shuffle those minutes to between Suggs and Houston and Anthony and Gary Harris. So Gary Harris is out, actually. So fuck me.
Yeah.
But it's really just Banchero. And I guess you can say Franz Wagner's a little cheap at 6'5", but never really too excited to play Franz Wagner,
He has not been that dude like over the last month. I don't know if he's just been nicked up or what. I think the usage is just kind of gone Banchero's way. But hey, in 2 games, Franz has averaged 42 fantasy points per game against Milwaukee. So it's not a matchup he hates, that's for sure. I'm not really looking at anybody here. I think Jonathan Isaac at 4K. Was he 4K flat? I don't see him on here. Not on there. On DK, he is.
Yeah, 4K.
4K flat. He's not on here for some reason. Anyway, I think he's in. If he's in at 4K flat, he's okay, especially if Wagner is out. But I'm probably fading the Magic because they play slow and their games kind of suck. On the Bucks side, I don't really want to play Bucks, but Giannis is out, so I have to entertain it, right? Dame's usage goes way up. He's projected for almost 47 fantasy points on the night, 21% boom rating. The matchup is terrible, but he's going to have so much usage that I don't really care at the 9.2K price. And then obviously Bobby Portis gets a boost. Brook Lopez gets a boost. And then, Chris Middleton's also out. So we have to look at the value of Pat Connaughton or Jay Crowder. So what are you thinking here?
Yeah. Dame, obviously, don't really need to sell you on that. Bobby Portis, with Giannis out, going to see more minutes, more usage off the bench. Don't mind him, even though he's not necessarily cheap. Beverly, maybe Connaughton, Meth, Jay Crowder. It's just a bunch of bad per minute guys other than Portis and Dame. Lopez kind of gets lost at the center position for me. So, yeah, I get that there's extra minutes to go around, but Dame's the only one that stands out. Everyone else, maybe Portis, the dusting of him. Again, I prefer to find cheap value with San Antonio or Atlanta or Toronto or someone like that, Memphis,
right,
etc.
Coming into the slate, I saw Pat as a decent value that we could consider, but 20% ownership is a little bit troubling. So if Pat Connaughton's going to be chalky, I might get away from that. Bobby Portis not carrying much ownership. I see the price and the matchup aren't ideal, but he projects okay and no Giannis, so I think that all points to him being more than solid, especially if he's going to be overlooked. Dame is interesting in the sense that the matchup is really bad, but there are going to be other guys priced kind of in that range that might float under the radar, as we've kind of alluded to, whether it be Quickly, whether it be Trae Young or what have you. There are some guys in that price range that we could use to leverage him. He probably is going to smash. I'm probably going to end up playing him, but there's definitely a world where Dame falls on his face against a tough Orlando defense. All right, last game of the night is probably one we should have some exposure to. The Spurs are 17-point dogs against OKC, but the game does have a 226 total, and there's a lot of value to look at over here. On the Spurs side, Wemby is out. Keldon Johnson and Cedi Osman are doubtful, and then Vassell, Sohan both remain out too. So, a lot of value, but it's a little bit scary because they're probably going to get absolutely destroyed here. What are you thinking about the Spurs?
It's not too scary just because they have so few guys. They kind of have to play. Branham being questionable, obviously that's meaningful since he might lead the team in usage if he's in. If he's out, it's a whole lot of Champagny, Graham, Trey Jones, Blake West. Collins and Sandra Mukashvili are these standout plays. Sandra power makes it to get to. Collins, though, for 4.9, I think it's just a priority, and you play him no matter what. I'm not really concerned about the blowout for him. He's too cheap. So, yeah, it's going to be – you have to get to this team. It's the prime source of value tonight. They're without 4 of their 5 usual starters, so it's kind of is what it is. It's going to be hard to avoid getting to 3 or 4 of them per lineup.
Yeah, let me actually refresh this because this is not showing up. The showing Wemby still in, and I don't know if it's going to still or not. but he's not in. He's officially ruled out, and that's obviously big. Yeah, so now we got him out. So Trey Jones leads the way. He's totally fine at 5.8. I'm with you. Zach Collins is very close to being a total must. The only reason why I would maybe go away from Collins is he might be one of the first guys to take a seat if it does go south quickly. And there's a lot of value on this slate. And also, right now, the ownership favors Mamu. I'm not even going to try to say that guy's full last name, but Mamu.
Kalashvili, baby.
Oh, all right. One try. Nailed it. Okay, so I think the ownership could shift here. It could flip. And if it's going to be 27 to 30% Zach and 12, 15% Sandro, that's a little interesting to me. But all these Spurs guys, Champagny, he's been really good, getting a lot of minutes. He's a guy for the Spurs I think could play 35 plus, even if they're losing by 30, just because they're so shorthanded and he's one of the young guys. So I would go Collins, Mamu, Champagny. Those are the three main Spurs that I really, really like and I'd have a lot of exposure to. But you really can use any of the guys who end up starting. And you have it, since it's going to be a blowout, most likely, you honestly can go and get some of these punts too. Although good luck figuring out which ones are actually reliable.
Sissoko.
Yeah. I mean, we're on a slate where we're talking about Kobe fucking Buffkin. So we do have to entertain all possibilities. All right, last team of the night, OKC. SGA, I was a little worried yesterday about his minutes, and he comes in and plays 38 and drops 40 real points, making me look like an idiot. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if he's a full go again, 10.1 is way too cheap for his upside in an absolute smash spot. And maybe Chet at 7.2 just because the matchup is really good. But I'm not super excited to go pay for these guys in what absolutely has to be a housing.
Yeah, but just because it's a pretty short slate and there's not really a ton to pay for, I think you can still get to them, namely Jalen Williams for 7.3. Just kind of easy to get to at power forward. SGA falls on a few guards, especially with the blowout potential for me, I think. Chet, like you said, is fine. Giddey is overpriced. Don't really see how you can prioritize 7-7 Giddey unless guys are out.
Right.
Maybe Aaron Wiggins, just because Dort is out and Hayward's questionable, but that feels pretty thin on a slate where we have plenty of other cheap stuff. So probably not needed on this slate.
Yeah, I think it's just SGA or bust. I agree. Jalen and Chet are totally fine if you land there. It's going to be tough to prioritize SGA at that price with all the other good players at point guard we've been talking about. But I think he's just the one that makes the most sense for me. All right, before we wrap it up here, let's look at overall boom rating. Leading the way, my boy, Sandro. Like I said, if the ownership shifts and Zach Collins is mega owned and Mamu for some reason dips lower, he is cheaper. He projects just about the same. He's got a better boom rating. I just think he's a really good play that possibly it could flip and he gets a little bit overlooked compared to Collins, who technically is the better play. But who here do you see with a really nice boom rating that you plan on building around, being overweight on, or even locking in for single entries?
I do think Mamu is going to be more owned just because he's power forward, and Collins you can only play at center. So it would be Collins for me. Even I said the blowout risk is there, but 4.9, he's good per minute. It's kind of hard for him to completely ruin you, even if he comes up a little bit short of salary-based expectations. I think he's the one I'm going to build around the most.
Yeah, how many Spurs and Grizz are too many on this slate?
I'm a lot more interested in the Spurs. As of now, obviously that could change depending on what happens with the Grizz, but I think 4 is the max number of Spurs that I would get to in a lineup. Memphis, like I said, not really on my radar as much right now. 4 generally is the rule of thumb that I go by. I don't really want to play 5 of the same team in the lineup.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I think the Memphis thing comes down to the status of those other 2 guys that we're still waiting word on. If those guys are in, I'm a lot less interested. And if they're out, I'm very interested. All right, before we leave, let's look at total ownership here. Sandro leads the way at 27% owned. And as you kind of alluded to, because of his power forward eligibility, that could stick or even go higher. Who here is very, very chalky that you plan on fading tonight?
Definitely Pat Connaughton. I just don't see the point of going there, even without Giannis or Middleton. They still have plenty of bodies they can cycle through, and Connaughton's really bad per minute. So I don't mind having 0% of him tonight.
Yep, I'm with you on that one for sure. The other one might be Grant Williams.
Grant Williams.
I mean, it's not that he's a bad play. It's that he might be a bad play at that ownership. That's where I'd lose my interest. All right, thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us today. Hopefully we helped you out. If we did, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to our channel, the DFS Build, so you get alerted to future videos. And by the way, you can try out these projections over at DFS Hero. Use our link below, get 15% off. Thanks for watching and good luck.